Entrepreneurship education has traditionally focused on preparing one type of student for venture creation and has been perceived by some as inaccessible or irrelevant.
As a student in the College of Arts and Sciences and as a journalist, I wasn't really sure that I fit that cookie cutter mold of what an entrepreneur or what a student interested in startup culture would look like.
Sometimes entrepreneurship is a dirty word for artists, and that couldn't be further from the truth.
I was a mechanical engineering student who knew nothing about entrepreneurship, but found it and it changed the trajectory of my life.
At Lehigh, we view entrepreneurship differently, more broadly. It's not just about launching a venture. It's about being entrepreneurial in any setting. And to be effective, it needs to be global, diverse, and inclusive. We call it Global Entrepreneurial Mindset.
To me, global entrepreneurial mindset means taking all of those key aspects of being an entrepreneur, but doing so in a way that's more inclusive.
Any entrepreneur, any person who can solve a problem should be able to do it regardless of background.
Lehigh taught me that entrepreneurship is really a mindset.
With the founding of the Baker Institute in 2010, Lehigh committed to fostering the entrepreneurial mindset as a path to success for students across disciplines.
Anybody that can see a problem as an opportunity and create value there is someone that can be an entrepreneur. Some people will do that by starting a business. Others will do that by creating a new policy or innovating within a larger company.
In 2017, we launched Lehigh at NASDAQ Center to accelerate the adoption of a global entrepreneurial mindset by educating, connecting, and inspiring the next generation of leaders. We've served hundreds of students each year through high-impact, immersive learning experiences that change the way students see themselves and the world.
After getting involved and working with people at the center, I realized that anyone can really develop that entrepreneurial mindset with the right tools, with the right guidance, with the right mentorship. So I'm trying to be entrepreneurial literally every single day.
I felt like it opened up my world, and it opened up opportunities for me to travel abroad and open my perspective up even more. Not only was I able to inspire change, but I was able to lead my communities in a very powerful way.
So what I want to do is start a school in Nigeria to teach young kids from a young age those tech skills that many people have, the opportunity to get here and give them the same opportunity to learn those tech skills at a young age so that when they grow up, they can influence and help their communities and help their whole country at the end of the day.
I never really thought of myself as an entrepreneur before coming to Lehigh because I didn't think I was ever going to make a business for myself. But Lehigh taught me that because I'm so involved in my leadership responsibilities in clubs such as Society of Women Engineers and Engineers Without Borders, and because I am taking initiative to make impact in my community, that I am in fact an entrepreneur.
There's not just one path to entrepreneurship. There are many. What's yours?
So welcome everyone to Lehigh University's Spark Spotlight on Entrepreneurship in India and beyond. This month-long series of 3 virtual presentations featured leaders in entrepreneurship practice and education from around the world. Today's presentation focuses on the talent, developing the next generation of global entrepreneur leaders of note. This session is being recorded and will be available to the public. This series is brought to you via a collaboration with the Office of International Affairs, Iacocca Institute, Baker Institute, Lehigh at NASDAQ Center, and Technical Entrepreneurship. Before I introduce the moderator for today, I would like to thank everyone for being here today with us in midst of this pandemic. And we are very much aware that no family is being spared by this. So we are in this with you together, and we will remain with you in this pandemic and post that with you. So the moderators for today are Lisa Getzler, Executive Director of Baker Institute, and Dr. Samantha DeWald, the Managing Director of Lehigh at NASDAQ Center. Over to you, Lisa.
Thank you, Shashir. I'd like to say to our students, alumni, and partners in India who are experiencing this ongoing and now even more acute COVID crisis, you are in our hearts and minds. I'd like to dedicate this session to the idea that our future is in the hands of those who are students today. And by developing their entrepreneurial talent, we're preparing them to be global entrepreneurial leaders and problem solvers. With Lehigh alumni and partners who are expert actors in the entrepreneurial ecosystem as founders, investors, mentors, thought leaders. Today, we're going to take a look at that ecosystem to see how the earliest seeds of entrepreneurial interest and behaviors begin to grow and why Lehigh is committed to that growth. For almost 2 decades, one of the hallmarks of a Lehigh education has been truly interdisciplinary learning. Our belief in and commitment to that approach led to a natural outcome, a culture of innovation. We know that innovation best occurs at the intersection of disciplines, and it's heightened by diversity, equity, and inclusion across the Lehigh learning community. We see creativity as necessary for innovation, and innovation is necessary to entrepreneurship. But what we're focusing on today is why Lehigh's approach to entrepreneurship education is not limited to teaching students how to launch companies or invest in them. Although we do that, it's not all we do. We're committed to developing the next generation of global entrepreneurial leaders. So what does that mean? It means we're graduating people with the mindset, skills, and agency to create solutions that are of value, wherever they are in their careers, wherever they are in the world, and regardless of their discipline. An entrepreneurial mindset is a path to success. In our programs, we provide students with the opportunity to develop their entrepreneurial talents through authentic, immersive experiences. In this way, Lehigh students learn to embody that mindset, and it positions them to be the problem solvers and the value creators. And they absorb the energy of entrepreneurial practitioners in these immersive programs by working alongside them, by getting inside their heads. And this is one of the ways that we work with students to gain the skills and agency to become actors who can think, do, and lead for innovation and entrepreneurial action. Sam DeWalt is now going to take us through the underpinnings and research behind what we mean by entrepreneurial mindset, skills, and agency. Sam?
Thank you, Lisa. Hello, everyone. So today's business world and the world at large needs a new type of leader, a leader who thinks and acts like an entrepreneur. We hear this time and time again from large organizations as well as startups. So what defines an entrepreneurial leader, and how does one cultivate these coveted mindsets and skills? At Lehigh, we were curious to dive deeper into the data, so we launched a research study in partnership with the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center and TU Dortmund University in Germany to better understand how to define, develop, and assess the entrepreneurial mindset. We surveyed educators and entrepreneurs to gain both perspectives and used our own entrepreneurship programs as living labs for research. Ultimately, we identified 10 core attributes that now make up our entrepreneurial mindset framework. which is broken into 3 different dimensions of skills, mindsets, and agency. In the skills domain, or the cognitive domain, this is where learners, students, leaders demonstrate key attributes such as opportunity recognition, complex problem solving, and creativity and innovation. In the mindset domain, we know that students or leaders are able to demonstrate key attributes such as resilience, self-efficacy, empathy and compassion, and entrepreneurial passion. And then finally, in the agency domain, this is where students or leaders demonstrate the ability to take risks, create value, and demonstrate entrepreneurial employability. And through our work, we've discovered and really proven that partnerships are the key to success, partnerships across the educators, the employers, and the talent in ultimately developing global entrepreneurial leaders. So today we're going to explore what that looks like in practice. We've lined up 4 amazing speakers who can share different perspectives on their own entrepreneurial journeys and why developing an entrepreneurial mindset has been key to their success. So first, we'll hear from the student perspective. So back over to you, Lisa.
Thanks, Sam. Let's welcome Eve Fried and Iman Brach. Will you join us? Hello, Eve and Iman.
Hi, Lisa. How are you?
I'm well, and you?
Good, thank you.
Good. Eve, I'd like to start with you. So you are in a program called Ideas, and we'll talk about what that is. You're about to graduate, and you're focusing on engineering, arts, and entrepreneurship. You're also a leader in service to the university as president of the Student Senate. This is a winning combination. Would you share how the ability to explore multiple pathways and apply, both left brain and right brain thinking through your educational experiences has helped you prepare for your future?
Hey, Lisa, thank you. That's a really good question. So I think that I had always known that I really loved problem solving. And so that's where the engineering comes in. That's where I think the right brain, right brain, left brain, not totally sure which one is which, actually.
Well, yours are both firing equally as strongly, so it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, so I think that's where the logic part comes in. And then I'd always been so interested in the arts and how it connects to us as humans, that humanity element to it. And so I always knew that my problem solving would be with people. And so that's kind of where the leadership role came in, was that I wanted to solve problems that people had on just a people-to-people interaction level. I didn't really like doing the math part, but I loved seeing the patterns within the Lehigh community and the students and what they needed and being able to solve those problems there. I'd say the way that it's prepared me for the future is understanding that my passion lies in, growing other leaders. Was that my problem solving was, how can I help you to become a better leader? And so being able to combine that and really deeply understanding that that is my passion has really prepared me for my future. And I'll always be thinking about that no matter what role I'm in. Because what it comes down to it, my passion lies in connecting with others and having others connect with others as well. So it's all about, just seeing those different links between different people and, seeing the best way that we can be effective as a team or a community.
So Eve, at what point did you realize that that was related to entrepreneurship? How did you make that connection?
I think it was more on a personal, individual level. I was feeling very boxed in. I was in an interdisciplinary program, but I was still feeling quite boxed in. People would ask me the question, so do you want to do art or do you want to do engineering? And I was like, why can't I do both? And so I kept getting boxed in. And that's kind of when I found the Baker Institute. And I saw kind of the escape out of those boxes that I was being forced into, where I was able to apply all of my different passions in just one general area that spanned over everything.
I think you've just described, in very real terms, how you were embracing an entrepreneurial mindset, maybe didn't know it, and that the ability to connect with the reality, the very real world of value that offers, actually added to the pathway that you have been on since then. So it's really wonderful that, well, we are so proud of you, and we know you're going to do great things. Iman, let's visit with you a little bit. So you two will be graduating very soon with a double degree in finance and management and a minor in entrepreneurship. So congratulations to you as well. So one thing I want to explore with you first is that you began your journey into entrepreneurship well before you got to Lehigh. And it turns out that through one of the Iacocca Institute programs, you participated as a high school student in the International Global Entrepreneurship Intensive, had a different name when you participated in it. And then 2 years later, you came back and mentored students in the program. So how did you come to value entrepreneurship so early on?
Yeah, so I think one of the things this program really taught me early on was how valuable the entrepreneurship field was. And I think the key here was hearing from speakers who were actually able to take, just a small idea or vision and develop it into an actual business. And I think seeing that firsthand is what gave me hope that this is something that's possible, and I can see myself, potentially doing it, kind of bringing that into reality a little bit, because you see it happening all the time, but like for me, it was hard to think that could I actually do it? Was I really capable of it? But this program, it helped me step outside of my comfort zone, as when I was participating as a young 16-year-old high school student, and it helped me develop my entrepreneurial mindset. And I think that's what really helped me see that this is something I am capable of. And it encouraged me to pursue it in my college education, and then also to come back as a mentor to students as well, as a way to, give back to the program that helped me start this journey.
So one of the programs you did participate in while you were at Lehigh through your, as a student in the College of Business and in partnership with the Lehigh at NASDAQ Center was Startup Academy, where you spent a summer working inside a startup as an intern while also receiving mentorship and some educational assets through that experience. So you weren't practicing to be a founder, you were working in support of a founder. So how did that experience further your understanding of entrepreneurial mindset?
Yeah, I think what this program really did for me was it showed me the impact that, whether it's a small scale startup, medium size, or even, larger, it showed me the impact that these kind of companies can have on a society and a community. And the company I was working at was Ethereum Classic Labs. And what they were trying to do was, encourage development of developers on this Ethereum Classic blockchain. And at the time, it was not very common. Most people, developed on different blockchains. And since there were so many, it was difficult for, our company to get, new projects on this Ethereum Classic blockchain. But seeing the motivation, seeing the passion behind it, and seeing the progress they were able to do, I thought it made me see how encouraging it was, and that no matter how challenging the problem is, it can be tackled. And seeing that being done firsthand, I think it was the biggest motivator, whether, I'm pursuing my own kind of idea or I'm supporting another. Either way, there is an impact that can be made. And I think that's the most rewarding part is, when you see the end result and you see that your end goal has been met. I think that was my biggest motivation there.
Yeah, really focusing on something real that was going to create value outside of yourself, outside of your schoolwork, is certainly a wonderful way to absorb that kind of thinking and doing. So that program, Startup Academy, is continuing on a very successful path, placing additional students each year in that kind of situation. In addition to that, the Baker Institute, along with the Lehigh at NASDAQ Center, offers the Global Entrepreneurial Fellowship program, which has very similar characteristics. And however, we're placing student interns in companies that are solving global problems outside of the pandemic are typically being located in country to work in different cultures as well. So these are two tangible ways I just want to share with our audience that students are able to embrace this type of learning at Lehigh. So Eve, let's go back to you. You have participated in many of the kinds of programs that we're talking about. You've done Lehigh Silicon Valley, the Baker Institute's Immersion program. You've done the Silicon Valley Innovation Internship program. You've done the Hatchery. You've done many of these immersive, authentic, experiential programs. So you have experienced exactly what we're talking about, and you've already shared with us how you think, but what was your biggest takeaway from those experiences?
I think that the biggest takeaway was realizing that there is such a support network in this community, in the entrepreneurship community. Everyone is so willing to help other people. And I think that it just stems from, the heart of entrepreneurship itself, that startups are about solving a problem to make someone else's life easier. And I think that everyone who chooses to take that risk to solve that problem, to found that company, is just so willing to put everything on the line to just help others. And I think that going through all of these different programs, meeting so many different people, whether they're students or industry leaders, is that they're just there to help others, and they're there to help you. They're there to help you grow. They're there to help anyone they can all over the world. And I think that has been my biggest takeaway. And it's such a positive environment to be in. And when you get knocked down, someone's there helping you get back up. And it's just like a wonderful community to be a part of.
Well, that's a really wonderful perspective, and it matches well with how you already were approaching your life. So, we're happy that you've made that connection. Iman, once you graduate, you're going to be heading into a professional experience, and you've chosen to accept a position in a large company. So I'm curious about your thoughts around how these experiences, the entrepreneurial mindset that you've developed, are going to influence the way you approach your new position.
Yeah, so I think one huge thing that my entrepreneurship education has done for me is the skill set that I've attained. Through these classes and these different programs, I've been able to build on my communication skills, presentation skills, team building, and needless to say, leadership skills, and many more. And I don't think these skills are just limited to entrepreneurship. And, in every kind of interview I had, I always stated that these are strong suits that I bring to the company to help further their growth and development. And, through that, I was able to land a position that I'm extremely excited about. And I think this is probably my, biggest takeaway from my very first Entrepreneurship 101 class, my first year of college. I knew from there that, whether I pursue, my own business or not, I know these skills, I can apply them in whatever kind of domain, because they are just, that useful. And I think that's one thing that's also helped me feel more confident going into this role as well, because I know that, and these days, like working on teams, being a leader, it's something you need. And I think that my entrepreneurship classes have provided me with such a strong foundation that I feel not just confident, but excited to go into my role, knowing that, it's something that I can excel in. So I think that mindset is what I've really gained from these experiences.
Thank you, Iman. So one last kind of lightning round question. You've already described the skills that you've gained, but I'd really love to hear in just a very short statement from both of you, what does it mean to be a global entrepreneurial leader in one sentence? Eve, I'm going to put you on the spot first. Just your very first impression. What does that mean?
I think for me, it means you know, recognizing that if you have those leadership skills and you have those teamwork skills and you have those people skills, they're not something that can be applied in just one place. That can be applied all over the world. Take your problem solving skills and make sure that you're able to spread it as far as you can to help everyone all over the place.
Thank you, Eve. Iman?
Yeah, I'll agree with Eve. And I would say that, you know, problems aren't just specific to one country, one state, or anything like that. A lot of problems are universal. And sometimes you need sometimes a universal kind of solution might not be the best case for you. You might need to have different solutions for the same exact problem based on the resources, the kind of communities that you're looking at. And I think being a global entrepreneur just means that recognizing those differences and understanding them just so you can make sure you provide the best solution to people in each individual area.
Well, thank you both. It's been a delight to have you with us, getting a front row view into the world you're entering and the value you'll be creating because of your mindset, skills, and agency, and the fact that we have helped you along that journey. We are excited for you. We wish you the very best. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.
Next, we're going to spend some time with the talent developers. Sam?
All right. Thank you, Lisa, Eve, and Iman for that really insightful conversation. And to Eve and Iman, we wish you the best as you graduate in May and can't wait to see the impact you continue to create in the world. So I'd like to invite Apoorv Bamba and Dr. Priyank Narayan to now join us on the panel. Hello, joining us from India. So good evening to both of you. It's wonderful to see you. So as Lisa shared, we're now going to dive into the perspectives of the talent developers as well as the employers. So Priyank, let's start with you. So you're head of the Department of Entrepreneurship and director for the Center of Entrepreneurship at Iacocca University, and you're also an entrepreneur yourself. So from your perspective, what are the virtues of not only helping students who want to start companies, but also this notion of applying entrepreneurial mindsets across disciplines and career paths? And can you share a bit about Iacocca's approach?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Thanks for inviting me and putting together this wonderful conversation. Iacocca is a liberal arts and science university similar to Lehigh. And one of the things that we did right from the beginning when we started out as a university was to bring in entrepreneurship into the curriculum. And it doesn't sit on the periphery. It is part of the core. So it allows students to do minors, it allows students to edit for entrepreneurship, which goes up on their transcript. Given that we are an interdisciplinary university and we encourage interdisciplinary perspectives and disciplines together, one of the things that we are truly focusing on is that regardless of the core that you're doing, you can supplement that education with entrepreneurship. So whether you end up joining, becoming an entrepreneur or working for an entrepreneur or a large organization, or like somebody said, into policy making, which many of our students get into, or working in the social sector, which many of our students get into, or, really doing a combination of all of these things, you are going out there with an entrepreneurial mindset. Now, let me give you a little incident. Some of the most sort of desirable on the recruiters on campus are some of the big 5 consulting companies, and these companies end up hiring people who've done a course in entrepreneurship, who come with an entrepreneurial mindset, who are able to demonstrate that they can think like an entrepreneur on the job. So just a little example of how these employers are looking for entrepreneurial skills. This is not just true for the big consulting companies, but also for some of the top social sector organizations, and they pick up our entrepreneurship students. So, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. I've always been very impressed by it. And Iacocca was founded by entrepreneurs, so it truly has been part of your core and integrated across the curriculum, much like Lehigh. So Apoorv, we actually met at Iacocca University 4 years ago. It was the first summer that Lehigh launched our Global Entrepreneurial Fellowship, and we had 4 students who spent some time in the Entrepreneur in Residence program at Iacocca that Apoorv, you were helping design. So it's been wonderful to see the partnership among our organizations grow over time. So Apoorv, you co-founded Ingenious Faces and Belong with the goal of helping connect students to global opportunities that enhance their entrepreneurial employability. So you've seen both the talent development side as well as the employer perspective. So can you tell us more about the mission of Ingenious Faces and the work you do to unlock the potential in students, the entrepreneurial potential?
Great, yeah, and I think again, Sam, thank you for inviting me, and it's great to be part of the same ecosystem as Priyank and yourself. I think it feels like a mini reunion after so many years, so it's great. Yes, I think obviously thinking a bit about the question and the vision, right, and a lot of if anyone's been an entrepreneur in the audience or otherwise, you'll realize that when you start your entrepreneurship journey, things like why and mission are not something you think about, right? It comes very instinctively what you want to do. Obviously, looking back, you can then start connecting the pieces. I'm a big Simon Sinek fan, but when I started the journey, it was not like, oh, this is going to be a why. I think it was very personal for me and my co-founder that we thought that the education system lacked something, and that was the whole global mindset. I was myself the product of the same thing. So, I finished university with not knowing much about global trends, what was happening beyond our own ecosystem. So I think the mission was very simple at the beginning, that how can we enable just the thinking, not even action, but how can students or young learners can start thinking beyond their own horizon, even if they can't afford to travel. Are there any other ways for them to just broaden their horizon? And that time, this was 6-7 years back, when entrepreneurship was not this cool, especially in emerging markets, be it in India, South Africa. So we thought entrepreneurship could play that role of broadening the mindset. So very simply put, that was the mission at the beginning. Can we use entrepreneurship as the fuel to help students think beyond their classroom? So, what is the learning out there? So yeah, that was very simply the mission, now that I can think back and put it in better words. Yeah.
I love that you ground and sort of start all your curriculum and programs in the why, which is something that we also connected over and really helping students explore their entrepreneurial passion, whatever that may be, whether that's launching ventures, going to work for a large organization, policymakers, artists, everything in between. So important to ground them in really understanding their why. So Priyank, back over to you. You touched on this a bit in terms of what employers on your campus are looking for in students. So in what ways will your Iacocca students who build and apply this entrepreneurial mindset be positioned to be global entrepreneurial leaders?
Right. So, Sam, like you would know and understand, and when we talk about liberal arts education, especially, we are talking about creating thought leaders. We're talking about creating leaders who come with a certain vision of how they're going to be change makers. But one of the very important elements which often gets missed out is that a very critical part of being a thought leader and being a change maker is also being able to execute, being able to go out there and garner the team to mobilize resources. And some of these core skills come with that entrepreneurial mindset. So a global leader cannot just say that I'm going to be a great thought leader or a change maker and give instructions from the ivory tower. That's important. But what's also important is that you have the core of being able to move all the resources to make that change happen. And more so in today's context, Sam, because the level of uncertainty that we're dealing with, the level of change that we're dealing with, the normals are being questioned every time we thought that, okay, this is the new normal. It's no longer the new normal. And that's happened not just, in the last it's not just a story of the near term, but it's very, very short. It's every week you're seeing a different change happening in different parts of the world. So I think what the core of all of this is, don't be that we are able to train our students of not being afraid to be executors, to be able to be mission driven and be able to drive that mission, which is a very important skill in today's time.
Absolutely. The skills and the mindsets ultimately need to result in agency or action. So love that execution is so important. So Apoorv, we've touched on that you have the perspective and have worked with both the talent side as well as the employer side. So I'm curious to sort of hear your perspectives on the employer side in terms of what you're seeing from both startups as well as large organizations, and we're talking across the globe. So can you share a little bit about what you've learned from the employer perspective? And then in a minute, I'll ask you to touch on the talent side as well.
Sure. So I think, as you would know, but we launched the Belong platform right in the middle of the pandemic, right? So we were doing a lot of activities across the board, but we realized that there was no one central way for a learner, especially in our ecosystem, to access the employer side of things, right? Be it for mentorship, be it for startup projects, for anything else. I think so. We started engaging a lot with startup founders and traditional corporates, and we realized that there's a lot of corporate jargon, right? 21st century skill set is the most overused word. So we started to break it down, really ask them, what do you really want in early talent, right? And I think the deeper we got into it, we got through 2-3 themes, and one was the hustler. And I think hustler and what Priyank mentioned, right? Someone who can actually do things, not just rely on their laptop and research papers, but actually going out. And that's what entrepreneurs are, right? You entrepreneurs are taught to be doing things, obviously after a lot of research, and but end goal is action. So I think a lot of them said, I just want someone who can do things, action oriented. The second thing was, and this is something very interesting, is they didn't want static talent. They didn't want talent that came from a university and just got stuck with that knowledge. Because I'm a graduate of Lehigh or I'm a graduate of Iacocca, that's my knowledge base, and I'm going to work from that base, right? So what World Economic Forum also calls it learnability, right? So learning to learn. They wanted learners. They want learners who can learn on the job without training. So that's a very funny balance, right? You want them to learn, but you don't want to train them too much. So that was the second sort of skill set that a lot of employers are looking, and more startups than corporates, because corporates still have resources to train you, but startups don't have those resources or time to train you, right? They want you to be on the job and get running from day zero. And the third, so that was learnability, and the third one was resilience, right? And pandemic has taught us that more than anything else, that can you withstand change? Can you move from offline to online in a month? Can you move roles from business development to strategy to whatever, right? So that needs resilience. And I don't know how do you teach resilience, but the only way I think I could learn resilience is by failing as an entrepreneur, right? So the more you try to be an entrepreneur, the more resilient you get. And that's a skill set any employer would love to have in an early talent. So yeah, those are the 3 things that we have really picked up, which has actually broken through the jargon of 21st century skill sets, this and that, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's helpful to break that down and put it into context. So on the student side, and you've worked with students from around the world, many countries, South Africa, India, US, and many others. So what have you seen in terms of the unique challenges or opportunities across these different cultural boundaries? And how are we doing as educators today in preparing students with those mindsets and skills that you're talking about in terms of the resilience, the learnability, and the ability to hustle?
Yeah. So I think, I think that's a very interesting question. And I feel that internships as a concept is becoming redundant, right? Especially if you're going to a well-established institution, you should be focusing more time on doing projects or apprenticeships or fellowships, right? The one that, both the campuses have. So I think what happens in an internship more often is that you get tied down with tasks. Unless you get super lucky and you have an amazing mentor and who actually invests in your learning. Internship is, again, corporate jargon for getting work done at a very cheap cost, right? So, or sometimes free as well. So I think what we are really pushing students, and we're also seeing that as a end goal. And I can again take a very simple example from Ashok and Priyank's class that he teaches design thinking. right? And we see, and then we are working with Priyank to create projects in design thinking. And we are seeing that they're actually doing so much more meaningful work, which is creating value at both ends for the student as well as for the employer, because it's focused on a challenge, not daily tasks. So I think that's, and we've seen that as a result, that more and more students who graduate with more project work or capstone, or I mean, there are different terms to it, instead of more internships, they're actually coming out on the other side with more of those skills, which is the entrepreneurial mindset. And an internship, what happens? Yes, I did a great internship with Uber, but what did you learn? Oh, I learned how to do amazing research. That's it. Because Uber's not going to give you any really important tasks to do if you're doing a campus internship with them, right? So I think rather, that's why we really push students to rather intern or do project with startups, because there you work directly with the founding team, you understand so much more about that ecosystem. So I think those are a couple of learnings on the talent side, that more focus on project work, active work, and really putting yourself out there to get mentored by people. I think that's a very, very big key, and we feel that's the big gap between academic to industry, that can you get a good mentor to make that jump.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important, and something that we truly value in all of our programs is that learning by doing, that project based, throwing students into really uncomfortable, unstructured environments, which you often find in startups. That's why partnering with startups is so valuable. And we really do focus on not just the learning of the students, but the value creation. At the end of the day, what value are you creating for that organization? And it's been really, powerful for students to be able to see that they can actually create meaningful impact and value working alongside startup founders. So completely agree with you on that front. So Priyank, back over to you. Does developing entrepreneurial talent among university students in India, does it have significance beyond their own personal career paths? And how is it both important to India as well as the rest of the world?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, Sam, and I think it's very relevant, especially in today's time. You see, one of the biggest challenges all of us have as educators is that we are preparing our students for jobs that don't yet exist. Let me say that again, for jobs that are yet to come into the world. And so you are now educating, graduating students for a 40, 50-year-long career, and they're supposed to remain relevant throughout their lives. That's the expectation with this degree or this education, right? How can we possibly be doing that? There is no way that you can deliver education that's going to remain relevant for the rest of their lives. So what you end up doing as a part and a core part of entrepreneurship education is that we are enabling them to become lifelong learners. And lifelong learners would be able to then be, like Apur said, resilient enough to move with the changing times and be able to deliver value, not just in their personal careers, but actually be problem solvers for problems that arise in the world, right? So one of the core skills and competencies that we are really delivering through this entire process is to look at global problems as entrepreneurial opportunities. And if those global problems are being seen as entrepreneurial opportunities, you're creating so many problem solvers around the world. So, while it sounds very utopic, it is actually, that's the only way you'll be able to address issues as complex as the COVID pandemic, which has arisen, because it cannot be solved if you are not, if you don't have a complex problem solving mindset, which you talked about as one of the core competencies. And this is going to have a large global impact. So, I mean, while some of the universities are introducing entrepreneurship curriculum as a part of the core, I would actually go out there and say it needs to be there, and it needs to be mandatory for everybody who's studying anything. So whether you decide to become a homemaker, or you decide to become a researcher or leading a large corporation, this is something which is a life skill. And moment we start recognizing entrepreneurial education or entrepreneurship education as a life skill, the perspective changes, and it's something that we must deliver in every student, in every discipline, and in every curriculum. And I think that's sort of the core of how we need to look at entrepreneurship today.
I love that, and absolutely love the idea of it being mandatory, right? Like data science years ago became, an encouraged discipline for all to engage in. I believe entrepreneurship is the same. As you said, it's an important life skill regardless of discipline or career path. So you've both articulated this beautifully, but I'll ask you the same question that Lisa asked the students to wrap up, and then we'll transition to our audience Q&A. So to define a global entrepreneurial leader in one sentence, Apoorv, you go.
In one sentence, okay. I think global entrepreneurial leader, I think someone who can transcend borders and understand the global economics while being truly local, right? Someone who can be global while understanding the local environment and the skill sets that we already mentioned. That's a global entrepreneurial leader. So empathy is a big key in that.
Love that. Thank you. And Priyank?
So for me, I think it is somebody who can drive interdisciplinary collaboration. The world is so complex, you cannot have one discipline solving these problems. So if you can drive an interdisciplinary and a multi sort of faceted approach to problem solving, then you are a true global leader.
Excellent. Well, thank you both for your incredible insights. So I'm now going to invite our other panelist, Eve, and I think Aman had to head off to class, but I'll invite Eve and Lisa to join us back. And we'll now turn it over to questions for our audience. So if you have questions, please feel free to either post them in the chat or post them in the Q&A box. And we look forward to hearing from you.
So while we're waiting for the audience questions, I'd like to go back to Apoorv, Priyank, and add Eve to the conversation around this idea of learnability. Could we spend a little bit of time on that? Because it's embodied in everything that each of you has said, but you called it out, Apoorv, using a word that is non-jargony and has kind of a broad set of definitions. So Eve, you've maybe heard that term for the first time today, learnability, and you heard sort of what that means to Apoorv. What does that mean to you?
I think right now, there's so many resources out there for me to learn whatever I need to learn. But I think something that sometimes leaders might forget is that people are there to learn from, and you have to be okay with asking tough questions and admitting to what you don't know. That's something I'm currently working through right now as a leader is, admitting that I don't know something and, maybe making myself look not as competent as I might be. But, being able to admit what you don't know and learn from those around you and ask questions is so important. And that's something I'm working on right now.
That's inspiring. Apoorv, how does that gel with your perspective?
I think I love it. I think, having the courage to say that I don't know something, that's the start. I think, again, to even learn something new, you first need to credit yourself to not know something, right? And just to add on to that, there's a very great, special book that I really recommend. It's Range, right, from David Epstein. So we are moving from a generation of specialists to generalists. And a lot of times it was seen as a bad thing that I want to do politics and I want to do entrepreneurship and I want to do a little bit of data science as well. So, a little bit of everything, right? So I think that's where we're moving towards. And that essentially, in very simple terms, a lot of people ask, how can I practice learnability? And that's what I tell them. Do 3 courses you've never even thought of doing. And this is talking to people at any age group, right? I'm not saying 20-year-olds, 40 years, 50. Just do something that you never thought you could do. And that's learnability in very, very, raw terms. Yeah.
So Lisa, I have a question for you. So you've been at Lehigh. The Baker Institute celebrated 10 years this year. So you're launching into your second decade. So when was it that you started to recognize the value in this approach to a more sort of holistic entrepreneurial education focused on mindset development?
Yeah, you know, I've been thinking about that, looking back at our 10 years and actually the 10 years that led up to the launch of the Institute, because so much groundwork and foundation building had been done by a variety of faculty members and university leaders. You know, the idea really started when Lehigh took an active leadership role in truly breaking down the boundaries and silos between disciplines. So when I joined Lehigh in 2001, interdisciplinary kind of across the university systems meant, you know, electrical engineers working with mechanical engineers. And it wasn't really a common practice for students from the sciences, the arts, the business sciences, and engineering to be literally working together in project-based courses to solve external problems. So once we were able to identify sort of the ways to do that, and believe me, it was a very entrepreneurial process because it wasn't welcome, there wasn't a precedent for it, and in any case, we kind of took it on and made it happen. There were some amazing folks doing that, and what we saw was as soon as students got into that experiential project-based program, they started to become different versions of themselves. So much like Eve described, you know, the ability to see that what you know is as important or less important than what your teammate might know, depending on what you're working on. So it was a slow build. Students were fearful. Fear of failure was a big thing. But once we got into our ability to manage, you know, sort of the expectations of the students, the expectations of the faculty, we saw this blossoming of this culture of interdisciplinary learning. And that is where we better understood and actually did a lot of research in understanding and assessing the underpinnings of the underlying process when it comes to entrepreneurial action. And so, you know, as early as 2005, we had unpacked a lot of it, and we were able to talk about it in terms that had some concreteness to them.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing. So we do have a question from the audience about leadership, which has been a core tenet of the Lehigh education. So what activities does the school provide to teach or train leadership in students? And if we can be specific. So Lisa, you want to take that one?
Gosh, I don't know where to start.
That's why I gave it to you.
Yeah. Well, I think that we have, you know, there's sort of two different paths. There's the path of, let me try to learn how to do this by developing an idea into a solution that I'm going to try to get out into the world, right? That is a path that we understand as sort of the entrepreneurial process. The programs that are, and the opportunities that are not that, are ones where, as we said, students have the opportunity to get inside the hearts and minds of those who are pursuing entrepreneurial outcomes. So when we say immersion into the ecosystem in Silicon Valley, what we mean by that is the preparation for students to spend meaningful time with founders and, you know, the leadership team of startup organizations as they're addressing the challenges that they're facing. So sitting in with, you know, problem solving sessions and discussions on business development issues and next steps in terms of product development. These are the ways that students are experiencing, as both Apoorv and Priyank has described, that process of diving into a project that has no right answer, that is going to change for good or for bad the trajectory of the company, and the students are actually involved in that. That creates the opportunity to learn in a meaningful way how it's going to work for each individual student. And that's where we see students say, this experience was transformative to me.
Great. Thank you. So we do have another question. So I'll go to Priyank and Apoorv with this question first. So what is one way students can begin developing a more global perspective for entrepreneurship? And where do you see students grow the most in a global perspective from past experiences? Apoorv, you want to start with that one?
Sure. Sure. So I think I'll actually take the example of the Global Entrepreneurial Fellowship, right? So I think what the pandemic's actually done is created this new world of opportunities for students and startup founders to connect on a virtual level. So I think that could be a great starting point for a lot of students, is to look out for startups that are looking to engage with young talent, right? And a lot of startups are looking at new markets, for example, right? Some a startup that's not established in the US wants to enter US and wants to work with a young team of students, right? So those startup connects are very, very important through a project where you work directly with the founding team. So it's direct training. So there's no structured entrepreneurial training, but it's working with an entrepreneur to understand what can go wrong and thousand things that they didn't even think of. So I think that could be a great starting point. And the biggest learning happens is when you actually get ingrained into a specific area, right? It could be business development, strategy, marketing for a particular startup. So that then you take classroom learning into a total holistic, active doing, right? And that's what entrepreneurship is all about. How can you take learning into doing? So I think those are a couple of examples that come to mind. Just working on as many startup projects as possible and not getting too wowed by the big brands, especially when you're in first, second, third year of college. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And certainly working with founders across different cultural contexts is a real valuable learning experience. Priyank, how about for you? What have you seen in Iacocca?
So, Apoorv, I think what you shared is a very interesting perspective and a very interesting example of how people get global perspectives, especially from an entrepreneurship opportunity. Let me give you one very specific competency that we are looking at global entrepreneurial leaders. And that competency is developing cultural intelligence. And that cultural sensitivity, cultural intelligence, because remember what I just said, which is you have to find entrepreneurial opportunities in global problems. And if you're going to be working with global problems, then you need to, of course, be aware of all the global problems, and you need to figure out whatever works for you to get access to those global problems and issues and opinions and so on and so forth. But most importantly, through these global internships, through the access that you have in your own context, develop this cultural intelligence. Because once you develop this cultural intelligence, you will be sensitive to a lot more global issues in their local context. Again, you can't be sitting in one part of the world to solve for another part of the world without having that context. And this whole element of design thinking and being able to empathize with different communities, with different cultures, is something that we often talk about inside and outside the classroom through our various projects.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And that's why for us at Lehigh, and I know for you all as well, Priyank, that the partnership between our entrepreneurship centers and our Office of International Affairs, we've seen so many similarities and synergies in terms of the values and the attributes that we develop in entrepreneurial leaders and global leaders. So we've really formed a strong partnership to help accelerate both at the same time. So Eve, I think we have time for one more question. I'll ask from your perspective as a student, what has been your experience in developing both the leadership skills as well as the global perspective during your time at Lehigh?
Well, I think it's an interesting question for me to answer. I've never actually been outside the country, but that was due to a pandemic occurring, unfortunately. I think for me, it's been a lot of self-motivation. I think, honestly, the fact that I haven't been outside the country really drives me to expand as much as I can while still being, in Pennsylvania. So part of my leadership, I would say, is having that self-motivation to want to go to places, even if I'm not physically there. And I think that's actually been a positive outcome of the pandemic, is realizing that I can do an internship in London just from my bedroom and still get that cultural knowledge. And so I'd say a huge proponent of my leadership has been, that drive to push the boundaries, even if I'm just in my bedroom. So I think that has been something that I've experienced this year, especially as a senior, wanting to get out there, and looking forward to graduating and seeing where that takes me.
Yeah, that's such a wonderful perspective. I know it's been a really challenging year and a half, and we know it's ongoing for many, and our hearts are with everyone in the world. But one opportunity, or perhaps silver lining, that we've discovered is that they're really to be able to break down those barriers, right? We are all connected globally, and we realize now how more connected we are than ever before. And like you said, Eve, you experience London, from your bedroom. Hopefully someday we want you to go to London and experience London, and we want our students to return to India for immersive experiences. But it really has changed the way that we think about this connected world and the role that global entrepreneurship can play. So I realize that we are at the end of our time together. I want to say thank you so much to our esteemed panelists and our wonderful guests who've joined us from around the world. I see Dr. Cheryl Matherly has joined us. So Cheryl, would you like to say some closing remarks?
I'll just wrap up very, very briefly on this. So first of all, Sam, Lisa, thank you so much for facilitating this fantastic discussion. And I want to thank Shashir for all your help with putting together the entire series. I think it's just been a really fantastic discussion over the last 3 sessions about entrepreneurship, about entrepreneurial mindset, and really importantly today, this discussion about how we go about developing talent. And so Eve, thanks for your time today, sharing about your experiences. Priyank, it's always good to see you, and just continue to be so impressed with the work that happens there at Iacocca. And Apurv, thank you so much for joining us and sharing about with the great work that you're doing on this. And I think, Sam, to what you said on this, that we really are reminded of how interconnected all the work is that's happening. And so, and in an odd way, even though we have not been able to travel, and in many ways working from our homes in this, we're still finding ourselves even more connected to our colleagues. And I think opportunities like this to be kind of sharing strategies, approaches on how we think about problem solving is really, at least to how you started it, looking forward. And I think that is something that we all need right now. And I'll just say to our colleagues and friends, alums and students in India, we really do appreciate the tremendous challenge that is happening there on the ground. And our support is with you on this. And we are really looking forward to better times on that. We also know that on this call that we are joined by with several high school counselors who are in the position of advising students about their choices and looking forward for them about what their university options may be. And we hope that you found that this to be a useful session to hear some more about what we do here at Lehigh. One of the programs that we did not talk about today, but Mom was part of on this, is our Iacocca Global Entrepreneurship Initiative, which is which is a program that we offer for high school students that specifically provides an early opportunity to explore principles of entrepreneurial thinking and get some experience working with global teams. This year, working with global teams virtually. Around learning entrepreneurship skills. Lisa, Sam, I know you both have been involved with that program as well in this. The IGEI is hosted each summer by the Iacocca Institute, which is our global leadership institute here at Lehigh. One of the things that we're going to do for our high school counselors who are on the call following this, we will be going back to the registrations for our webinar series, and we will be doing a drawing for a full scholarship to the IGEI for this summer. The program will be entirely virtual, and we would invite our counselors to award this to a student that you think in your school that you think would really benefit from this type of learning. Shashir will follow up with the winner on how that happens, but we're excited to be able to make that as an offer to students so that there is yet another avenue to be learning entrepreneurship skills, entrepreneurial thinking, entrepreneurial mindset, alongside students from all over the globe this summer. So with that, thanks everybody. We appreciate you joining, and have a good evening and a good day.
Thank you, everyone. And it was a pleasure having you all here. And it's so wonderful series. I think it was a vision of Dr. Matherly. I think it's so nice. And Dr. DeWalt, Lisa, Mike, Kira, all pitched in, and it was a wonderful exercise. Thank you so much for being part of this wonderful exercise. I think I can thank you all from behalf of all the attendees and those who have attended this session in the past also. So thank you all. It was a pleasure to be here with all of you.